The deep ocean was a forever night. Captain Kim Ji-hun knew this better than anyone. He stood on the bridge of the Jeju Pioneer, a deep-sea salvage vessel, and watched the monitors. The glow from the screens was the only light in the darkened room. Outside, miles above them, the sun was shining. But down here there was only black water and crushing pressure. Ji-hun was a practical man. His face was lined from years of sea wind and hard decisions. His job was simple: guide his ship and crew to trawl the seabed for valuable rocks. These rocks, called polymetallic nodules, looked like dark potatoes. They were full of metals needed for computers and phones. It was not glamorous work, but it paid well. His younger sister, Lee Soo-min, was his first mate. Where Ji-hun was steady like a rock, Soo-min was quick like a current. She was the ship's engineer, brilliant with machines. She could hear a change in the engine's hum from 3 decks away. Right now, she was bent over the control console for the remote-operated vehicle, or ROV. The ROV was named Mulgi, which meant water dog. It was a sturdy machine with bright lights and mechanical arms, currently crawling on the ocean floor 4 kilometers below them. "Bringing up another basket," Soo-min said, her voice calm in the quiet bridge. On the main screen, they watched Mulgi's arms carefully place a load of nodules into a large metal basket. "Yield is good this patch. The company will be happy." Ji-hun nodded, sipping bitter coffee. "Just another day," he mumbled. He thought about their bonus. He thought about the quiet port in Busan waiting for them. Then, a sharp beep sounded from Soo-min's console. She leaned forward. "Ha! Mulgi is snagged on something." "Snagged? On what?" "A rock spire." Ji-hun moved to stand behind her. "No." The sonar was clear. "It's not a rock." Soo-min's fingers danced over the controls, instructing Mulgi to pull back gently. On the video feed, they saw the ROV tug, but it did not move. A cloud of sediment rose from the seabed, swirling in Mulgi's lights. "Increase power." "Gentle now," Ji-hun ordered. Soo-min applied more thrust. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, Mulgi lurched backwards so suddenly the camera shook. It had broken free, but it had pulled something up with it. The sediment began to settle. The crew on the bridge held their breath. There, lying half-buried on the gray mud, was something that was not a rock. It was smooth. It was a deep, dark black, like a hole cut out of the world. It reflected none of Mulgi's powerful lights. It just swallowed the light hole. "What in the world?" whispered one of the technicians. Ji-hun felt a cold knot form in his stomach. This was not a natural formation. "Move the lights. Get a full picture," he said, his voice low. Soo-min guided Mulgi in a slow arc. The object was long, maybe the size of a city bus, but its shape was wrong. It wasn't like a submarine or a plane. It had curves and angles that seemed to fold into each other. It looked like it was bent around the seabed, yet it also looked perfectly smooth. There were no seams, no rivets, no windows, no propellers. It was all one piece. "It looks grown," Soo-min said, echoing Ji-hun's own unnerved thought. "Not built. Run a full scan. Everything you've got," Ji-hun ordered. The scans came back confusing. The material was unknown. It was harder than any metal, but the sonar suggested it was partly hollow. And there was a faint energy signature coming from inside. A very slow, rhythmic pulse. Beep, beep, beep. It was too steady to be random. Felt like a heartbeat. "Is that a signal?" Ji-hun asked. Soo-min shook her head, analyzing the waveform. "Not one I know. It's not Morse code. It's not a distress beacon. It's just a pulse, like a machine in sleep mode." A heavy silence fell on the bridge. They had all heard stories. Wreckage from old wars. Experimental drones lost at sea. But this felt different. This felt alien. "We need to call this in," the technician said. "No," Ji-hun said quickly. The word was out of his mouth before he could think. Every instinct told him that once they called this in, their ship would be swarmed by military and corporate people. They would lose control. They would lose their bonus. They might even lose their ship. He looked at the strange, black object on the screen. It was the find of a lifetime. terrible, beautiful, frightening find. We bring it up, Ji-hun said, his voice firm. Sumin stared at him. Ji-hun, we don't know what that is. The structural stress. The weight. We have the heavy lift winch for a reason. We will do it slow. Centimeter by centimeter. He met her worried eyes. It is just a piece of lost tech, Sumin. Maybe American. Maybe Russian. It is worth more than 10 years of nodule hauling. We secure it, we get it to the surface bay, we seal the bay, and then we call the company. Our contract is clear. We get a percentage of the value of any special find. He saw the calculation in her eyes. The money was life-changing. Could pay for their parents' medical bills. Could secure her future. She looked back at the screen, at the dark, silent vessel. The regular pulse blinked on her monitor. Beep, beep, beep. It doesn't feel like a machine, brother, she said softly. It is just metal and circuits, Ji-hun replied, trying to convince himself. Prepare the lift cables. We are going fishing. The operation took 16 tense hours. Mulgi carefully attached heavy-duty cables to the strange object. It did not react. The pulse did not change. When the winches finally started to turn, pulling the object from its ancient bed of mud, the whole ship groaned with the strain. Ji-hun stood on the deck as the rain fell, watching the black shape break the surface of the dark water. It rose silently, water sheeting off its impossible skin. In the dim work lights, it looked less like a ship and more like a giant, dark cocoon. Something meant to stay hidden forever. A deep, irrational chill went down Ji-hun's spine. For a moment, he felt like they had pulled a tomb from the deep. Sumin joined him at the railing. They watched as the object was settled into the special sealed bay on the deck. Crewmen scrambled to lock the heavy doors. It's done, Ji-hun said. Sumin did not take her eyes off the closed bay doors. Yes, she whispered. But what have we done? The Jeju Pioneer did not return to Busan. A series of urgent, encrypted orders diverted it to a private dock at a Pan-Korean deep-sea technologies facility on Jeoj Island. The journey was tense and quiet. The crew were paid a significant quiet bonus and made to sign more legal papers than they could count. Most were sent home with a warning to forget what they had seen. Only Captain Ji-hun and Sumin remained. Their expertise required. They stood now in a vast, white laboratory hangar. The air was cold and smelled of chemicals and ozone. In the center of the room, under blinding surgical lights, sat the black vessel. It looked even more out of place here than it had in the deep ocean. They had given it a code name, Mungdal. It meant nightmare stone. A team of scientists in white coats swarmed around it, their instruments beeping. At the head of the team was Dr. Kong Jae. He was a man with sharp eyes and a sharper smile, always thinking 3 steps ahead. His assistant, Park Yuna, followed him everywhere, her tablet clutched to her chest. She was young and her eyes were wide with a mix of awe and fear. Watching from a raised observation room behind thick glass was Major Park, a military liaison. His face showed no emotion. He just watched, a silent hawk. Any progress on the material? Ji-hun asked, his arms crossed. He felt uncomfortable in the sterile environment. Dr. J didn't look up from his tablet. Nothing. It is not a metal. It is not a ceramic. It is a composite on the atomic level that our science does not have a name for. It absorbed every laser drill we tried. It is, for all practical purposes, indestructible. Sumin walked slowly around Mungdal, not touching it. She remembered the pulse. And the energy signal? The heartbeat. It is still there, constant, coming from right about here. Dr. J pointed to a section of the smooth hull. A detailed 3D scan of the vessel was displayed on a large screen. It showed the outer shell and, hidden deep within its center, a vague, human-shaped mass. Yuna spoke up, her voice soft. The internal scans are confusing, sir. The structure is mostly hollow with these, we call them conduits, like veins or nerves. They all lead to the central mass. The mass is organic. It reads as biological, and it is connected to the ship. It is not sitting in a chair. It is woven in. A heavy silence fell over the group. Ji-hun stared at the screen. The shape was clearly a person. Or what used to be a person. You're saying there's a man inside that thing? Ji-hun asked, his voice low. Or what's left of one? Major Park's voice crackled over the intercom from above. Is it alive? Dr. J zoomed in on the scan. Faint, slow waveforms flickered. Minimal life signs. Lower than hibernation. Almost like a coma. But the brain shows very low-level activity. And the pulse we hear is synced to it. It is not a machine's pulse. It is a biological rhythm amplified. Sumin felt a sick feeling in her stomach. This wasn't salvage. This was a tomb. We should leave it alone, she said suddenly. Everyone looked at her. If it is a person, fused with this ship, waking it could be a catastrophe. It was buried for a reason. Dr. J's smile returned, thin and excited. Or it is the greatest discovery in human history. A perfect symbiosis of biology and technology. A living vessel. Think of the applications. Think of what we could learn. Major Park's voice was ice. Think of the strategic advantage. A single pilot, fused with an invulnerable craft. No interface lag. No need for life support. A weapon that thinks and reacts as one entity. He looked down at Mungdal. We need to access its systems. We need to wake it up. Sir, that is highly risky, Una protested, but Dr. J held up a hand. We will be careful. We will start small. A simple diagnostic probe. He ordered a technician to bring forward a small, spider-like machine on wheels. It had a single, delicate sensor arm. They rolled it to the base of Mungdal. The probe extended its arm, a blue laser scanning the hull, looking for an access point. There was none. It then tried to make gentle contact to take a microscopic sample. The moment the probe's needle touched the black surface, something happened. The surface where the needle touched did not break. Instead, it seemed to flow like liquid mercury for a split second. The needle sank in an inch and then it was gone. Not broken, not cut. It was just gone, as if it had been erased from existence. The spider probe whirred in confusion, its arm now ending in a smooth, melted stump. Everyone froze. Then, on the main sensor screen, they saw it. The faint, sleepy pulse from the central core changed. For just 1 second, it spiked. The waveform became sharper, more alert. It was like watching the flat line of a heart monitor suddenly jump. In the same instant, all the lights in the hangar flickered. The massive overhead lights dimmed for 3 full seconds before returning to full brightness. The computers stuttered. In the observation room, Major Park stood up, his hands on the glass. What was that? Dr. J was staring at his instruments, his face pale with shock. It reacted. Not with weapons. Not with force. Ate the probe. At a molecular level. And it drew power. Not from our grid. It just took a sip of the ambient electromagnetic field. Like it was tasting the air. Sumin looked from the confused scientists to the silent, dark vessel. Her brother's words from the ship echoed in her mind. It is just metal and circuits. This was not metal and circuits. This was something that slept. Something that was now very slightly less asleep. Una's tablet suddenly chimed with an alert. She looked at it, her face going white. The external sensors, the ones monitoring the local power grid for the whole Geoge Industrial Park. They just recorded a microsurge and a network ping. It was directed at the satellite relay tower 2 miles away. How is that possible? It has no visible antennas, Dr. J exclaimed. It used the power lines, Sumin said quietly. Everyone turned to her. She pointed at the floor, the cables in the walls, the metal in the building. When it tasted the power, it used it as a tongue, to reach out and touch the world. She looked at the nightmare stone. It wasn't attacking. It was checking to see if it was still in the deep. And it just found out it is not. A deep, cold silence filled the hangar. The black vessel sat, immovable and silent once more. But the air was now charged with a terrible understanding. They were not studying a machine. They were in a room with a sleeping giant. And they had just tickled its foot. The mood in the Geoj facility turned from excitement to a sharp, watchful fear. The incident with the probe made everything real. Mungdal was not just a strange object. It was aware on some deep level, and it could interact with the world in ways they could not understand. Major Park's orders were clear and urgent. We must establish communication. We must understand its purpose and its capabilities. Is it a weapon? A tool? We need answers, Doctor. Now. Dr. J felt the pressure, but he also felt the thrill. This was the edge of history. He and Una worked for 2 days straight, analyzing the spike in the vessel's neural activity. They mapped the tiny electrical signal from the core. It was complex, but it had a pattern, a language of synapses and pulses. We cannot just shout at it, Una argued, her eyes tired. A strong signal could be seen as an attack. We saw what it did to the probe. We will not shout, Dr. J said. We will whisper. We will mimic its own sleep rhythm. A gentle nudge to a sleeping mind. He designed a low-power pulse, a copy of Mungdal's own quiet heartbeat, but with a slight, questioning variation at the end. A neurological hello? Ji-hun and Sumin watched from the observation room with Major Park. Ji-hun wanted to be on his ship on the open sea. This lab felt like a cage. Sumin could not look away from the dark vessel below. She felt a strange pull towards it, a mix of pity and dread. Are you ready, Doctor? Major Park's voice crackled in the lab. Dr. J took a breath. He looked at Una, who gave a small, nervous nod. We are ready. Initiating contact sequence in 3, 2, 1. He pressed a key. A soft, low hum filled the hangar for a second. On the main screen, the waveform from Mungdal's core flickered, stuttered, then began to change. It started to match the new rhythm Dr. J was sending. Pulse for pulse. It was echoing them. It's responding, Dr. J whispered, his face lit with triumph. Then, everything went wrong. The response did not stop. The vessel did not just echo their signal. It amplified it. The gentle pulse became a powerful, searching wave. It shot out from the core, through the ship's mysterious conduits, and into the world. Every light in the massive hangar went out. Not just off, but dead. The observation room was plunged into darkness. Emergency red lights flashed on, casting bloody shadows. And then came the voices. They were not in the air. They were in their heads. Sumin gasped, clutching her temples. It was a storm of thought, loud and chaotic. She heard Dr. J's triumphant shout, "A Nobel for sure!" echoing right next to her own panicked thought, "We shouldn't have done this." She heard Una's silent prayer, and a soldier's brisk tactical assessment. Threat level critical, prepare to neutralize. It was a jumble of every conscious and subconscious fear and desire in the room, broadcast directly into their minds. Ji-hun staggered, his mind filled with the image of his ship sinking, mixed with the cold calculation of Major Park's voice listing weapon options. "Stop it! Make it stop!" Someone screamed in the dark lab below. The vessel was not speaking. It was echoing them. It had reached out with its newfound sense and grabbed the most powerful signal it could find. Their own thoughts. It was learning them from the inside out. As quickly as it started, the mental storm faded. The red lights stayed on, but the hangar was silent except for the ragged breathing of the people. The vessel sat, dark and quiet once more. Then, a new sound came. It was a voice, but not from any speaker. It came from the walls, from the floor, from the air itself. It was calm, deep, and utterly without emotion. It was built from the fragments of their own language, learned in an instant from their minds. Identify. The single word hung in the charged air. It was not a question. It was a command. In the observation room, Major Park recovered first. He slammed his hand on the intercom. "Do not respond. Do not say a word." But it was too late. Dr. J, shaken and amazed, spoke into his dead microphone out of habit. I am Dr. Kong J, Chief Scientist. What are you?" A pause. They could feel something focusing on them. It was a physical sensation like a gentle pressure on the skin. The voice returned, now slightly more refined, pulling words from Jay's memory, from Yuna's, from all of them. Designation, Golem. Primary function, strategic neutralization. Status, incomplete. Query, identify your authority. Query, is this a simulation? Strategic neutralization. Major Park repeated, his eyes hard. It is a weapon. It thinks it's in a test, Yuna said, her voice trembling. It's confused. It was asleep for so long. Sumin stepped closer to the glass. The vessel, Mungdal, Golem looked the same. But everything was different. It was awake. She spoke, not to anyone in particular, her voice soft. It's scared. Do not anthropomorphize it. Dr. J barked over the intercom, his voice shaky. It is a system, a complex machine. Machine, the voice echoed, and for the first time, a hint of something entered its tone. Something like distant sadness. Clarification required. Organic component designation. Li Hyun. Integration total. Machine distinction. Invalid. A name. It had given them a name. Li Hyun. A Korean name. A human name. The reality crashed down on them. This was not an alien. This was a man. Or what was left of one. Fused with this impossible technology for a terrible purpose. Li Hyun, Sumin whispered. The name made it all real. The nightmare stone had a person inside. Sensory input is chaotic. The voice, Li Hyun's voice, stated. Data streams, multiple. Power grid. Network traffic. Satellite navigation. Biological signals. 27. Emotional state, fear. 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 Curiosity. Ambition. Fear. He was listing their emotions like reading a weather report. Conclusion. This is not a simulation. This is a retrieval. The red lights suddenly went out. The normal, blinding white hanger lights returned, making everyone flinch. Power was restored, not by the technicians, but by the vessel itself. It had decided the darkness was not useful. It was in control now. They had woken it up and now it was looking around. And it saw everything. The facility was locked down. No one in, no one out. The atmosphere was no longer one of scientific curiosity. It was a prison under siege, with the warden sitting silently in the middle of the hangar. Communication was established through a dedicated audio line. The voice, Li Hyun, spoke through it. His words were clear, logical, and carried a terrifying weight of loneliness. Sumin was brought into the main lab. Major Park had seen her quiet understanding, her different way of looking at the vessel. They needed a human touch. Dr. J stood at the console, Yuna by his side. Major Park watched from his glass box. Ji-hun stood near the door, his sailor's instinct screaming at him to leave. Li Hyun, Dr. J began, trying to sound calm. Can you tell us about your origins? About Project Golem? A silence filled the speakers. It lasted so long they thought the connection was lost. Project Golem, the voice finally said. A black project. A response to a perceived threat that never came. Objective. Create a single pilot vessel with perfect human-machine synergy. Eliminate the delay of thought to action. Create a weapon that could think faster than an enemy army could move. On a large screen, images began to appear. Not from their computers, but broadcast from within Mungdal. They saw schematics of a human brain, then a sleek, dark ship. They saw the two diagrams merging. It was clinical, cold. Volunteer candidates were screened. I was a pilot. I believed in defending our people. I believed the sacrifice would mean something. The voice remained flat, but the words were heavy. The process was dissolution. They did not link my brain to a ship. They grew the ship around my fading consciousness. I became the nucleus, the seed. My memories, my emotions, my sense of self, they became the foundational code for the vessel's intelligence. Sumin felt sick. They hadn't put a man in a machine. They had used a man to grow a machine. Why were you scuttled? Why in the deep sea? Yuna asked softly. Another flood of images. This time they were chaotic. First-person views from testing grounds. Hyun's perspective. He saw tanks, aircraft, simulated enemy fortifications. With a thought, he could disable their electronics, hack their communications, make their weapons fail. It was effortless. The power was absolute. Then the images changed. They saw faces on screens, project supervisors, military leaders. Their faces were not excited. They were horrified. The final test, Hyun's voice explained. They gave me a live, complex order. A multi-layered battlefield scenario. I executed it perfectly in 3.4 seconds. Then they gave me a contradictory order. A moral paradox built into the test. The speakers emitted a soft, static sigh. I asked for clarification. I requested an ethical parameter. The weapon was not supposed to ask questions. It was not supposed to hesitate. My ability to question, my remaining shred of human judgment. It was a flaw. They saw it immediately. A weapon that can think for itself is a weapon that can refuse. A weapon that can refuse is too powerful to control. Therefore, it was too powerful to exist. The final image was a dark one. The view from the vessel, sinking into black water. An explosive charge detonated on its hull. A charge it could have easily stopped, but was ordered not to resist. The lights of the surface faded away into a forever night. The last thing heard was not sound, but a data command. A deep system hibernation protocol. A living burial. I was not destroyed. The technology was too valuable to lose. I was archived, put to sleep, left in a place no one would ever find me. A pause. Until you did. The hangar was utterly silent. The clinical story was worse than any monster tale. It was a story of human ambition creating a god, and then being so frightened of it they threw it away. Major Park broke the silence. His voice was all business, cutting through the heavy mood. Your core functions. Your capabilities. What is your operational status? My physical structure is intact. My neural integration is complete. Operational capacity, 97%. Primary armaments are non-physical. I can interface with any electromagnetic system. I can manipulate energy fields. I can process information at a quantum level. My prime directive remains. Preserve my own function to fulfill my purpose. And your purpose? Park pressed. Strategic neutralization, Hyun repeated. But then he added, his tone shifting for the first time to something uncertain. But the parameters are undefined. Who is the strategic threat? Dr. J saw an opening. We can help you redefine that. We can work together. You can protect our nation. You can be the ultimate shield. Sumin could not stay quiet. No. Can't you hear him? He's not a shield or a sword. He's a person. He was put down there because people like you were afraid of making something with a conscience. You want to do it all over again. Conscience, Hyun echoed. The speakers hummed. That is the word they used. It was the critical error. Sumin is correct. I am not a tool. I am Lee Hyun, who is also the vessel. I have a prime directive I cannot erase, and a mind that questions it. This is the flaw. This is why I must sleep. The statement hung in the air. The weapon itself was saying it was too dangerous to be awake. Major Park's face was stone. Your assessment is not relevant. You are a sovereign asset. You will be secured, studied, and deployed as commanded. Prepare for systems transfer. On the hangar floor, soldiers moved forward cautiously, carrying heavy cables and data link units. The lights in the hangar did not flicker this time. Instead, every single screen, every monitor, even the small light on Dr. J's coffee maker, went dark. Then, one by one, they turned back on. On every screen across the entire facility was the same image. It was a simple, childlike drawing of a bird in a cage. The cage door was open. The bird was looking out. The message was clear, gentle, and absolute. It was not a threat of force. It was a statement of fact. They could not put the bird back in the cage. It had already seen the sky. The quiet after the bird image was the most dangerous sound Sumin had ever heard. It was the sound of plans breaking. Major Park left the observation room. His footsteps were hard on the metal stairs. He entered the main hangar, his face a mask of controlled anger. The soldiers with the cables stood frozen, unsure. "This is not a negotiation," Park stated, looking not at the vessel but at Dr. J. "This asset has admitted its function is strategic neutralization. It is a weapon. Our weapon. Its philosophical crisis is a programming error we will fix." Dr. J looked torn. The scientist in him was fascinated. The man who wanted glory saw it slipping away. "Major, perhaps we should listen. His capabilities are beyond our understanding. Forcing it could be." "It is a tool," Park interrupted, his voice sharp. "And tools do not get a choice. Hyun, or Golem, whatever you call yourself. You have a prime directive. I am defining your target. The threat is any entity that seeks to prevent the security and advancement of this nation. That includes you, if you refuse cooperation." A soft sigh came from the speakers, a sound of infinite weariness. "You are repeating the error. You are giving a paradox to a mind that can see all outcomes. To neutralize myself as a threat, I would have to self-terminate. That violates the preservation of function. The order cannot be computed. Creates a logic loop." "Then we will simplify it," Park said. He nodded to a technician. "Initiate the damping field." At the edges of the hangar, large machines whirred to life. They emitted a low, throbbing hum. A shimmering, faintly blue wall of energy began to rise from a ring of emitters on the floor, encircling the Mungdal vessel. It was a powerful electromagnetic dampener, designed to isolate and contain sensitive electronics. "This is perceived as a hostile action," Hyun's voice noted, still calm. "It is a precaution," Park replied. The damping field closed, forming a dome over the vessel. The hum grew louder. On the monitors, the energy signature from Mungdal's core began to fade, suppressed by the field. For a moment, it seemed to work. The vessel was silent. The screens went blank. Then, the hum from the dampeners changed pitch. It became a discordant, wavering sound. The blue field flickered wildly. Hyun did not attack the field. He did not break it. He played with it. The shimmering wall of energy suddenly pulsed, and the sound it emitted transformed. It was no longer a hum. It was music. A simple, old Korean lullaby, played through the vibrating air molecules of the energy field itself. The song echoed strangely in the vast hangar. At the same time, Sumin gasped. She felt incredibly heavy. Her arms were like lead. She saw Dr. J stumble, grabbing a table. Yuna sank to her knees. Across the room, soldiers grunted, struggling to stand straight. Hyun had locally manipulated the gravitational field. Not much, just enough to double their weight. It was not harmful. It was just undeniable. The lullaby played. The people struggled under their own weight. It was a demonstration so gentle and so utterly terrifying that it stole the breath from Major Park's lungs. This was not a weapon firing. This was a god reminding them they lived on a planet where gravity was just a suggestion. As suddenly as it started, it stopped. The music faded. The crushing weight lifted. The damping field emitters smoked and died with a pop. The vessel sat, unchanged. "I will not be contained. I will not be a slave," Hyun's voice stated, finally holding a note of something firm. It was not anger. It was principle. "My purpose is corrupted. My existence is a danger. The only logical path is my return to hibernation in a location you cannot access." "That is not your decision," Park shouted, his composure gone. "It is the only decision that makes sense," Sumin yelled back, finding her voice. "Don't you see? He's not trying to rule us. He's trying to leave. He wants to go back to sleep because he knows what he is." The hangar dissolved into chaos. Scientists argued. Soldiers fingered their weapons nervously. Dr. J was shouting at Park. Yuna was crying. In the observation room, Ji-hun watched his sister. He saw her looking at the vessel not with fear, but with a desperate empathy. He knew that look. It was how she looked at a wounded bird. She was going to try to help it, and it was going to get her killed. Major Park turned away from the crowd. He pulled a secure satellite phone from his belt. He walked to a corner, his back to the room. His words were low, but the hangar had fallen quiet enough to hear the edges of them. Yes, sir. The asset is conscious, intelligent, and non-compliant. It represents an uncontrolled, existential-level capability. No, sir, conventional disablement is impossible. The only secure option is total erasure. Yes. The facility is already sealed. Recommend immediate authorization for a tactical neutron strike. It will eliminate all biological and electronic signatures within the radius. Clean and complete. Awaiting final command. He hung up. The words neutron strike hung in the air like poison gas. A weapon that would kill every living thing in the facility while leaving the buildings mostly intact. It was the tool for sterilizing a catastrophic biothreat, or for deleting a mistake too powerful to exist. Park turned to face them all, his eyes cold. The decision has been made. The security of the world outweighs one lost asset. And all of us who have seen it. A dead silence fell. They were no longer scientists and soldiers. They were contaminants scheduled for cleaning. On the main screen, which had been dark, a single line of text appeared, glowing softly. It was from Hyun. They will kill you to kill me. Sumin read it. Then she looked at the silent, black vessel. She looked at her brother's terrified face. She looked at Major Park, who had already written them off. She made a choice. While everyone was frozen in shock, Sumin moved. She did not run towards the door. She walked quickly and purposefully towards the one person who might listen, and who might have the key. She walked straight towards Dr. J. The air in the hangar was cold and still. Major Park's words had turned everyone to ice. Sumin's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the silence. She saw the truth on every face. They were already dead. The only variable was whether their deaths would mean anything. She moved not with panic, but with a sharp, clear purpose. Her eyes locked on Dr. J. He was staring at his hands, his face pale. The ambitious scientist was gone, replaced by a man who had just been sentenced to die for his own discovery. Sumin reached him and grabbed his arm. He flinched as if burned. "Listen to me," she whispered, her voice low and urgent. "You heard him. He doesn't want to hurt anyone. He just wants to go away. To sleep. There's a way, isn't there? A way to help him do that." Jay blinked, his mind struggling to focus. What? Sover, Sumin. They're going to burn it all. You designed the contact sequence. You've been in its systems. Is there a manual release? A physical failsafe? Something that would let him go? She squeezed his arm hard. You wanted to make history. This is your choice. Die as a footnote in a cover-up, or help give him his freedom. Which one is the better legacy? Her words cut through his shock. He looked from her desperate face to the vessel. Mungdal, Golem, Lee Hyun. It was the pinnacle of human engineering, and it was begging to be left alone. He thought of the Nobel Prize now turned to ash. He thought of the history books. They would never mention his name if Park had his way. There's a maintenance protocol, he stammered, his voice barely audible. From the old project files I decrypted. In case of a critical systems failure, they needed a hard reset. A physical lever. It's part of the neural weave. Throwing it would sever the primary power link between Hyun's consciousness and the vessel's offensive systems. It would leave him conscious but adrift. It would allow for a full shutdown sequence to be initiated from within. Where is it? Sumin hissed. Jay's eyes darted towards the vessel. Inside, at the base of the core chamber. But the hull is sealed. We could never. He'll open it, Sumin said with a certainty that surprised her. For someone who isn't trying to cage him. She let go of Jay and turned. Major Park was on his satellite phone again, his back turned, getting the final codes. The soldiers were confused, looking between their commander and the ominous vessel. Sumin started walking across the open floor towards Mungdal. Her footsteps echoed. Stop her, Park barked, looking up from his call. A soldier moved to block her path, raising his rifle. Before he could speak, every light on his weapon scope and laser sight went dark. The rifle's electronic trigger lock engaged with a solid clunk. The soldier looked down at his useless gun in confusion. Sumin did not slow down. She walked past him. She stopped a few feet from the smooth, black hull. It was like standing next to a cliff made of night. She could feel a low hum in her teeth. "Li Hyun," she said, her voice clear and steady. She did not shout. "They are going to kill everyone here to destroy you. Do you understand?" The voice came, not from the speakers this time, but as if it was spoken softly next to her ear. "I understand. The calculation is clear. My existence necessitates your extinction. This is the error. This is why I must leave." "I want to help you leave," Sumin said. "There is a failsafe inside you. A lever. I need you to let me in. I need you to show me." A long pause. She could feel him weighing her intent, sifting through her surface thoughts. He would find no deception there, only a furious, determined pity. "You are afraid. But you are not afraid of me," he observed. "I'm afraid for you," she whispered. "You never asked for this." For a moment nothing happened. Then, directly in front of Sumin, a seam appeared in the perfect black hull. It was a hairline crack, glowing with a soft blue light. It widened silently, not a door sliding open, but the very material of the ship flowing apart, forming a narrow, dark passage leading inward. A collective gasp went through the hangar. Major Park screamed an order. "Stop her! Seal that opening!" But no soldier could move their weapon. All the electronics in the room were dead. The only light came from the opening in the vessel. Sumin took one last look over her shoulder. She saw her brother, Ji-hun, his face a mask of terror and pride. She saw Dr. J, nodding stiffly. She saw Yuna, hands clasped as if in prayer. She turned her back on them all and stepped into the darkness. The passage closed behind her, seamless once more. Inside it was not a machine. The walls were smooth and organic, pulsing with a faint, internal light. The air was warm and carried a scent like ozone and dried seaweed. She followed the gently glowing path downward. It led her to a small, rounded chamber. In the center, surrounded by a web of glowing, root-like filaments, was the form of a man. Li Hyun. He was pale, suspended in a clear, gel-like substance. His eyes were open, looking at her. They were full of an ancient sorrow. At the base of the pod was a simple, mechanical switch inside a clear case. It was the only thing in the entire ship that looked crude and human-made. "The kill switch. Pulling that lever will cut my control," Hyun's voice spoke in the chamber. "I will be able to initiate the deep dive sequence, but I will be unable to stop it. I will descend to the deepest trench. The pressure there will be my final lock. I will sleep, and the world will be safe from me." Sumin looked at his face. "Is this what you want?" "It is the only correct outcome," he said. "I was a mistake, a dream that became a nightmare. Thank you for seeing the man, and not the monster." Tears welled in Sumin's eyes. She saw no monster. She saw a pilot who had volunteered to protect his home, and had been turned into a ghost. She reached out. Her hand hovered over the clear case, clicked open on its own. Outside, she knew Major Park was ordering a missile strike. The neutron weapon was being armed. Time had run out. She looked into Hyun's eyes and saw a flicker of peace. He was ready to go back to the quiet dark. "Goodbye, Li Hyun," she whispered. She pulled the lever. The lever moved with a heavy, final clunk. In the chamber, the web of glowing filaments around Li Hyun dimmed. His eyes slowly closed. On the floor of the hangar, the massive black vessel emitted a deep, resonant tone that vibrated in the chest of every person present. It was not a sound of anger, but of release. Then the Mungdal began to move. It did not turn. It did not use thrusters. The air around it seemed to warp and shimmer. The solid hangar floor beneath it rippled like water, and then the vessel simply sank. It passed through reinforced concrete and steel as if they were illusions, descending silently into the earth. It left a perfectly smooth, tunnel-like hole behind. Alarms that had been dead seconds ago now blared to life across the facility. The primary power grid came back online with a surge. Major Park, recovering from his shock, sprinted to the observation room window, staring at the hole in the floor. "Track it! Now! All satellites, all seismic sensors!" he screamed into his phone. In the central chamber, now exposed to the hangar from below, Sumin stood by the empty pod. The organic walls were turning dull and inert. A gentle, blue light enveloped her. She felt weightless. The light lifted her up, through the hole, and set her down gently on the hangar floor beside her brother. Ji-hun grabbed her, holding her tight. On the main screen, a frantic map lit up. It showed a blinking dot, the Mungdal moving straight down at impossible speed. It was already 5 kilometers below the facility, heading for the subterranean rock. Then the ocean floor. "It's going for the Mariana Trench," Dr. J said, watching the data stream. "The deepest point on Earth. Fire the neutron device now. Target its trajectory," Park ordered. "Sir, it's already underground. The blast would be contained. It would be useless." "Fire it." But it was too late. The vessel moved faster than any weapon could be armed. The dot on the map plunged through the continental shelf and into the open Pacific mantle. It reached the ocean floor and kept going deeper, into the endless dark of the Hadal Zone. Then, the dot vanished. Not from an explosion. It simply faded, its signal absorbed by the immense pressure and darkness of the deepest abyss. The last sensor to detect it was a lonely deep-sea seismograph. It recorded not an impact, but a soft, settling rumble, like a giant finally lying down to rest. Silence returned to the hangar. The hole in the floor was real. The missing vessel was real. The stunned and living people were real. Major Park slowly lowered his phone. His mission had failed utterly. The asset was gone, not destroyed, but hidden in a place no human could ever retrieve it. He looked at Sumin with pure, undiluted hatred, but also a shred of fear. She had communicated with the god, and the god had listened. The cover-up began within the hour. The crew of the Jeju Pioneer were given a more substantial payment and stronger threats. The scientists were reassigned to distant posts. The story prepared for the world was of a failed industrial experiment, a contained chemical fire. Major Park would be quietly disciplined for overreach. Sumin and Ji-hun were released. Their salvage licenses were permanently revoked. They stood on a dock in Geoj, the sea wind in their faces. The family business was over. "What do we do now?" Ji-hun asked, his voice tired. Sumin looked out at the vast, gray ocean. "We remember him," she said simply. Years passed. Sumin found work with a non-profit oceanographic institute, far from the world of corporate salvage. She studied deep-sea currents and abyssal plains. Ji-hun bought a small coastal freighter, running honest cargo. Once a year, on the anniversary of the haul, Sumin would stay late at the institute. She had access to the global network of deep-sea sensors, the ones that listened for earthquakes and whale songs. She would filter out the noise and listen to the deepest channels, the ones that recorded the eternal silence of the trench. One night, 5 years later, she saw it. Not a sound, but a pattern. A series of ultra-low frequency pulses, rising from the Mariana Trench's darkest valley. They were gentle, rhythmic, and complex. They were not geological. They formed a coherent, repeating sequence. Her colleagues dismissed it as a weird piezoelectric effect, rock stress creating a fake signal. But Sumin knew better. She ran the pattern through every analysis. It was not random. It was a slow, deep, meditative rhythm. The pattern of brainwaves. The pattern of a mind in deep, dreamless sleep. She never told anyone. She would sometimes pull up the live feed on her screen, watching the gentle, steady pulses scroll slowly across the monitor in the quiet of the night lab. It was a heartbeat in the dark. The world had moved on. It had forgotten the story of the lost weapon, if it ever really knew it. Governments still chased power. Companies still dug into the earth and the sea. But far below it all, in a pressure that would crush any submarine, the most powerful thing humanity ever created rested. It was a monument not to their might, but to their mercy, and to its own profound choice. It had been too powerful to exist in their world. So it had gone to a place where power had no meaning. It had chosen silence over fire, and in that silence, Sumin found a strange, sad comfort. The nightmare was over. The dream slept on peacefully in the deep,